The bank manager grabbed the old farmer's sleeve in front of 30 customers and said the 12 words that would destroy his own career. The beggar's line is outside. This lobby is for customers, not charity cases. Security took the 76-year-old man by both arms. They walked him past the tellers who had known him for decades. They put him out on the sidewalk like a stray dog, in the rain, in his muddy work boots. The old man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just pressed his hand flat against the folded white handkerchief in his chest pocket, looked up at the bank's sign for a long moment, and walked away. Here's what that manager didn't know. The muddy boots he mocked belonged to the bank's single largest depositor. $11.4 million. The marble floor he was so proud of. Built on land that old farmer owns. And 60 years ago, when this bank was 9 hours from collapse, it was that man's family who saved it. For days later, on the courthouse steps, in front of the entire county, that manager would repeat those exact 12 words one more time, on the worst morning of his life. And the old man in the muddy boots would decide, in front of everyone, whether the town's bank lives or dies. But first, which country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. And stay till the end, because what this farmer does at that auction is something you will never forget. 4 days earlier. Monday. 5 a.m. Harold Brennan woke before his alarm, the way he had for 60 years, in the farmhouse his grandfather built outside Maple Creek, Iowa. He fed the cattle in the dark. He fixed a gate latch that didn't really need fixing. Then he did the one thing he did every morning without fail. He opened the cedar box on the dresser and took out a white handkerchief. Blue cornflowers embroidered in one corner, beside the initials EB. His wife Eleanor had stitched it from a scrap of her own wedding dress, 52 years ago, and tucked it into his suit pocket on the morning they were married. "So your hands are never empty," she told him. Eleanor had been gone 6 years. The handkerchief had not left his pocket for a single day of them. Downstairs, 10-year-old Josie was eating cereal with her school bag already on her shoulders. His granddaughter. His whole remaining world. Harold had raised her alone for 4 years, ever since an icy highway took his son Caleb and Caleb's wife in one terrible phone call that split his life into before and after. "Friday's the last day of school," Josie said into her cereal, which is how children announce the things that matter most. "Friday. 3:15, Harold said. "Rain or shine?" She smiled. Every Friday since the funeral, through harvest, through blizzards, through everything, Harold Brennan stood at that school gate at 3:15 sharp, and afterward came butter pecan ice cream at Dot's drugstore counter. 1 scoop each. Same 2 stools. In 4 years, he had never missed a single Friday. Remember that promise. It's going to matter on the hardest Friday of this whole story. Harold had 2 errands at First Prairie Bank that Monday. The first was a 9 o'clock appointment to renew a lease, a piece of paper most of Maple Creek had forgotten existed. The second was a wire transfer. Because his young neighbors, Dean and Amy Weaver, 28 and 26, with a baby girl, were 4 days from losing their farm at a foreclosure auction. Harold had sat at his kitchen table the night before, done the arithmetic once, and made his decision the way his father used to make decisions. In about 11 seconds. He put on a clean flannel shirt for town. But it had rained all weekend, and a man who checks his cattle before his errands carries a little of the pasture with him. His boots were muddy. They were always a little muddy. In 60 years, nobody at First Prairie Bank had ever once mentioned it. Nobody, until Bradley Nash. Nash was 34, shipped in from the Chicago regional office 8 weeks earlier to modernize the branch. He wore a watch worth more than a used pickup and referred to the Maple Creek branch, in emails, as the museum. In 8 weeks he had pushed out the coffee pot, capped the teller windows, and started a purge of what he called low-value legacy accounts. The tellers were afraid of him. The customers avoided him. And at 9:06 that Monday morning, Harold Brennan walked through the glass doors and onto Bradley Nash's polished marble floor. Nash saw the boots first. Then the weathered hands. Then the mud, 3 small crumbs of Iowa field dirt on his imported marble. He never asked the name. That was his fatal mistake. He walked straight across the lobby, in front of a full Monday morning line, and raised his voice so everyone could enjoy it. "Sir. Sir. You're tracking manure across my floor." "Morning," Harold said. "I have a 9 o'clock. And I need to send a wire. Let me stop you right there." Nash smiled the way men smile when they think there's an audience worth performing for. "The beggars line is outside. This lobby is for customers, not charity cases." The lobby went dead quiet. Marisol Vega, the head teller, started to come around the counter. Mr. Nash, that's what, Marisol? A customer?" Nash laughed. "Look at him." Harold looked down at the 3 crumbs of dirt on the marble. Then he did something no one in that lobby would ever forget. The old man lowered himself to one knee, slowly, the way a 76-year-old kneels, took Eleanor's handkerchief from his chest pocket, and wiped his own mud off the bank's floor with it. 52 years of cornflowers, pressed to marble. He stood back up, folded the dirty handkerchief with the same care as always, and put it away over his heart. "Son," he said quietly, "this floor was here before you. It'll be here after you. Get him out," Nash told security. "And flag whatever accounts he thinks he has. Anything dormant gets reviewed. We're not a charity." 2 guards, one of them, old Pete Sandoval, whispering, "I'm so sorry, Harold," the entire way, walked Harold Brennan out of First Prairie Bank into the rain. The wire for the Weaver farm never got sent. And a 17-year-old girl in the lobby line had filmed every second of it on her phone. Now, to understand the size of what Bradley Nash had just done, you need to know what happened at that bank 60 years ago. Because this wasn't the first time First Prairie Bank stood on the edge of a cliff. October, 1966. A rumor tore through the county that First Prairie was out of cash. It wasn't true, but bank runs don't care about true. By afternoon there was a line out the door, farmers demanding every dollar, and the young bank founder, Arthur Calloway, was 9 hours from locking the doors forever. If the bank died, every farm loan in the county died with it. That evening, a grain truck pulled up in front of the bank. Emmett Brennan, Harold's father, climbed down, walked past the whole panicked line, and set a canvas bag on the counter in front of everyone. $186,000. The Brennan family's entire harvest money. Everything they had. "If my money's staying," Emmett said, loud enough for the street to hear, "yours is safe too." The line broke up within the hour. The bank lived. 16-year-old Harold watched the whole thing from the cab of that truck, and watched Arthur Calloway come out from behind the counter and shake his father's hand with tears standing in his eyes. Arthur opened a ledger that night and moved the Brennan family to the front of it. Account number 0001. The oldest account in the bank. It has never closed. And 5 years later, when Arthur needed land to build his new branch on the best corner in town, Emmett Brennan leased him the corner of the Brennan farm, 60 years, $1 a year, sealed with a handshake and a single condition. As long as the bank remembers who it serves. That 60-year lease expired this year. The renewal papers were sitting on the branch manager's desk that Monday morning. The 9 o'clock appointment Bradley Nash blew off. That was the landowner, coming in to sign. Harold never made a sound about any of it in the decades that followed. That was his way. In the 1980s farm crisis, when banks were repossessing half the Midwest, Harold quietly co-signed notes and covered payments for his neighbors. 31 family farms in this county still have their own names on their mailboxes because of him, and most of them don't even know it. He grew Brennan Farms to 3,100 acres. He married Eleanor, buried his son, and kept getting up at 5 to feed cattle, because grief doesn't excuse you from chores, and neither does money. $11.4 million sat spread across the accounts of a man who still darned his own socks. Because Harold Brennan had learned the only lesson about wealth that matters, it's not for showing. It's for the day your neighbor's baby girl is about to lose her home. That was the man Bradley Nash threw out into the rain. By Monday night, the video had a name, the Muddy Boots Video, and 400,000 views. By Tuesday morning, it had 2 million, and the comments were on fire. But here's the thing about Bradley Nash, cornered men double down. He put out a statement calling it a routine vagrancy issue, handled by the book. He still hadn't asked anyone the old man's name. Harold, meanwhile, said nothing to any reporter. He did his talking a different way. Tuesday, 9 a.m., he walked into Prairie Gold Credit Union 2 blocks away and sat down with the manager, a polite young woman who recognized him instantly and nearly knocked over her own coffee. He began the transfer of everything, all of it, $11.4 million, out of First Prairie Bank. The paperwork would take until Friday morning to clear. Then he drove to his lawyer's office and gave formal notice. The ground lease under First Prairie's branch, expiring this year, would not be renewed. The bank had 12 months to move its own building off Brennan land. He did both things without raising his voice. Rain or shine, that was Harold. And then Maple Creek did what small towns do. Word got around, not the video, the truth. Who he was. What his father did in '66. What he'd quietly done for 31 farms in the '80s. And one by one, pickup trucks started pulling into First Prairie's parking lot. Farmers closing accounts. Feed stores moving payroll. The diner. The co-op. By Wednesday afternoon there was a line out the bank's front door, and this time, the line was leaving. 60 years after Emmett Brennan stopped a bank run with a canvas bag of harvest money, his son's muddy boots had started one. History doesn't repeat, they say. It rhymes. Bank President Ruth Calloway, Arthur's granddaughter, was at the state banking conference in Des Moines when her phone finally caught fire. She watched the Muddy Boots video once, recognized the handkerchief before she even recognized the face, and went pale. She was in her car within 10 minutes, doing 80 through the corn. Thursday, she tore through the branch like weather. And in the archive room, in her grandfather's own ledger, she put her hand flat on the page, account 0001, Brennan. Beside it, framed on the archive wall the whole time, hung a black and white photograph from October 1966, a farmer setting a canvas bag on a counter, and her grandfather shaking his hand. Bradley Nash had been working 8 weeks under that photograph. He'd never once looked at it. But Ruth's worst discovery came at 6 p.m., when Marisol Vega knocked on her office door, closed it behind her, and put a folder on the desk with shaking hands. He's been flagging farm accounts as high risk to speed up the foreclosures, Marisol said. The Weavers weren't the first. And there's this. Printed emails. Between Bradley Nash and a regional director at Titan AG Holdings, the agri-corporation that had been buying up foreclosed family farms across 3 counties at auction, cheap, and rolling them into industrial megatracts. The emails discussed pipeline properties. They discussed the Weaver farm by name. And they discussed a consulting arrangement for Nash, plus Titan's help landing him a regional vice president chair. The foreclosure auction was Friday, 9 a.m., on the courthouse steps. Ruth Calloway sat alone in her office for a long time that night, under the weight of her grandfather's ledger. Then she made 3 phone calls. The first was to the bank's lawyers. The second was to the state banking regulator. The third phone call, nobody in town found out about until Friday morning. Friday. 8:52 a.m. Courthouse steps. 200 people. The Weaver family up front, Dean gray-faced, Amy holding the baby, both of them dressed like it was a funeral, because it was. Bradley Nash stood off to the side in his best suit next to a silver-haired man from Titan AG named Dunmore, and the two of them had the relaxed look of men who already know the ending. Titan's opening bid was set insultingly low. Nobody local could compete. 15 minutes, 1 signature, farm gone. At 8:57, the auctioneer read the parcel. At 8:59, Dunmore opened the bidding. At 9:04, with the gavel already rising, going twice, the crowd parted. And the old man in the muddy boots came up the courthouse steps with a cashier's check from Prairie Gold Credit Union in his hand. The transfer had cleared at 8:40. Harold Brennan raised the check and bid the Weaver Farms full value. The crowd made a sound like a wave hitting a wall. Dunmore's smile died mid-face. Titan's whole business model was buying farms cheap, and there was nothing cheap left on those steps. But it was Nash who broke first. He actually stepped forward, flustered, in front of 200 witnesses and every raised phone in the county, and heard himself say, "This is, sir, you can't just, we've been through this. The beggars line is outside, this lobby is for customers, not charity cases." He said it. On the courthouse steps. To the man holding a 7-figure cashier's check. Word for word. For 1 full second, Maple Creek was silent. Then somebody in the crowd laughed, one short, sharp bark, and it was over. You could watch it in his face, the exact moment Bradley Nash finally asked himself who the old man was. "His name," said a voice from the back, "is Harold Brennan." Ruth Calloway came up the steps in her grandfather's gray overcoat, with 2 bank lawyers behind her and a folder in her hand. Account 0001. The largest depositor this bank has ever had. The owner of the land your marble floor sits on. And the son of the man who saved First Prairie Bank in 1966, you've been working under his father's photograph for 8 weeks, Bradley. She turned to the auctioneer. First Prairie Bank withdraws this foreclosure sale, effective now. The Weaver loan is reinstated at its original terms. Then she held up the folder, and her voice went cold and public. And these are emails between our branch manager and Titan AG Holdings, arranging to steer this county's foreclosures into Titan's pipeline in exchange for a personal, consulting arrangement. They were delivered to the state banking regulator last night. Titan AG is barred from doing business with our bank, permanently. She looked at Nash. "You're terminated. Not for the video. For this." It was 9:06 a.m. 60 years of Brennan luck, rhyming again, the exact minute he'd thrown Harold out on Monday, to the minute, 4 days later. Whatever else you say about Bradley Nash, in the ruin of that moment, with his career in ashes and every phone in the county pointed at his face, he found one small piece of a man inside himself. He walked to Harold Brennan in front of everyone and didn't offer his hand, because he understood he hadn't earned the right. "Mr. Brennan. On Monday I looked at your boots and told you, the beggars line is outside, this lobby is for customers, not charity cases." His voice cracked on it. "I said it to the man whose family built the ground I was standing on. You knelt down and wiped up the mud with, he had to stop, with something I suspect I don't even deserve to know the story of. I'm not asking you to forgive it. I just needed to say it plainly, in front of everybody, the same way I did it to you. I judged a man by his boots. I will spend a long time being the story parents in this town tell their kids. I earned that. I'm sorry." Harold looked at him for a moment, measuring, the way he measured a load before deciding if it was worth carrying. "Son," he said at last, "the mud washes off. Remember what doesn't." That was all. He'd already turned to the weavers. Amy was crying into the baby's blanket, Dean's mouth was moving without producing any sound. Harold pressed the folded check into Ruth Calloway's hands instead. "Deposit it under 0001, he said. "The lease renewal too, I'll sign it. On 3 conditions. The bridge loan program for family farms comes back, the way your grandfather ran it. The teller windows stay, this town banks with people, not screens. And that one," he nodded at Marisol Vega, standing frozen at the edge of the crowd, "runs the branch." She was the only one in that lobby who remembered what the job was. Ruth Calloway, third-generation banker, 58 years old, tougher than drought, stood on the courthouse steps and wept in front of her whole town. The deposit started coming back that same afternoon, pickup by pickup, the run reversing itself the way it had in 1966. It turned out Emmett Brennan's old sentence still worked, 60 years later, coming out of his son. "If my money's staying, yours is safe too." And then Harold Brennan checked his watch, excused himself in the middle of the biggest moment Maple Creek had seen in 60 years, and drove to the elementary school. 3:15 p.m. Last day of school. Rain or shine. Josie came through the gate scanning the crowd of parents, checking, the way she still always checked, and found him standing exactly where he always stood. At Dot's drugstore, on the same 2 stools, over 1 scoop of butter pecan each, she studied him with 10-year-old eyes that missed nothing. "Everybody at school says you saved the Weaver's farm. And beat the bank." "Bank's fine," Harold said. "Man just forgot who he worked for. He'll remember now." Josie reached over, took the handkerchief from his chest pocket, and frowned at the corner where 3 small stains of dried Iowa mud had settled into the cornflowers. She smoothed it on the counter, folded it the careful way he'd taught her, the way Eleanor had taught him, and tucked it back over his heart, patting it twice, exactly like the grandmother she'd never met used to do. "So your hands are never empty," she said. Harold Brennan, who had not cried at the bank, or on the courthouse steps, or in front of 200 people, looked straight ahead at the soda fountain for a good long while. "That's right, sweetheart," he said, when he could. "That's exactly right. Here's the truth this story leaves behind. The world will read your boots before it ever reads your heart. It will look at the mud and miss the miles. And the people worth the most almost never look like it, because real worth doesn't dress up for the lobby. It gets up at 5, keeps its promises at 3:15, and carries 52 years of love folded in a chest pocket. So be careful who you send to the beggar's line. You might just be looking at the only reason the roof over your head is still standing." Now tell me in the comments, has anyone ever judged you by your muddy boots, and lived to regret it? I read every single comment, and your story might inspire the next video. If this one hit you somewhere real, hit subscribe and ring that bell. There's a brand new story every week, and the next one is even bigger. God bless, and I'll see you in the next story.